Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Colton Richardson, and I just wanted to thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar on what specialized master's program is right for you here at Olin Business School in Washington University in St. Louis. I'm very glad to see that we have some people joining us this morning, and hopefully some more might come in a little bit throughout the presentation. But before we begin, I just want to introduce myself. As I mentioned, my name is Colton Richardson. I'm a graduate programs recruiter here at the Olin Business School. I work primarily with our specialized master's program students, so we'll talk a little bit later about getting connected with some of our recruiters here in the office. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew my information before we began today. Wonderful. And so before we do begin the presentation, I do want to make sure that we've set everyone up to enjoy the presentation. And so just to let everyone know, I've muted your microphones so that we can reduce background noise. And if anyone is having trouble hearing me now or throughout the presentation, please use the raise your hand function, or you can go ahead and send a chat box message to me, and we can hopefully get that taken care of really quickly. And just to let everyone know that this webinar will be recorded, so if you have to leave at any time or you know anyone that registered and wasn't able to make it for the webinar today, it will be sent out, and so please be on the lookout for that when it becomes available. And then lastly, we will take questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A function box at any time. If it doesn't seem like your question maybe benefits the larger group, or we run out of time to answer everyone's questions, I will make sure to follow up with you directly by the end of the week. Well, great. So now that we have those out of the way, we'll go ahead and run through our agenda for today. So what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes or so is we're going to talk about who we are. We're going to talk about some of the programs that we offer. We're going to talk about some of the student experiences that you can have as a part of any of our programs here at Olin Business School. And then we're also going to talk about those next steps for you once you're done here today. Wonderful. So you're probably wondering, where is Washington University located? And so a couple different places people might think is the West Coast in Washington State or East Coast in Washington, D.C., but we're actually in St. Louis, Missouri. And so that is one where you'll see in the Midwest. We're historically known as the gateway to the westward expansion. And so you can see us with a lot of historical highlights, such as 1904 World's Fair. But one of the big factors for a lot of students when talking about St. Louis is that wonderful arch that you can see in a lot of different videos and pictures about us here in St. Louis. But also with the business environment that we have here in St. Louis. And so you're probably looking and wanting to know what kind of networking opportunities exist in the city, whether or not you choose to stay here long-term or just short-term after your study. And so St. Louis is home to 9 Fortune 500 companies and 18 Fortune 1000 companies. So we were recently ranked actually in the top 5 fastest growing cities in the US for startups. A lot in our Cortex innovation community. You can see a couple of different recognitions with that throughout the program. And you can see that connection to the startup community through a lot of our different specialized master's programs. And then also, I'm talking about who we are here at Washington University in St. Louis. And so a couple different things that you've seen about St. Louis. Now we want you to understand more about us here at Washington University. And so we understand that numbers matter to many people. So we're going to start with a few rankings and then kind of go from there and see what we do best. So we are ranked number 1 for our BSBA program, number 4 for our Master in Finance program by the Financial Times in 2017. Ranked number 21 in the nation by U.S. News and World Report for our MBA in 2017. And then for any entrepreneurs or future ventures out there and thinking about entrepreneurship, we're actually ranked number 10 for entrepreneurship by the Princeton Review. But when you're thinking about all these rankings and what it really matters to you, you're probably thinking about your experience on campus. And so we were ranked number 15 for quality of life. Really interestingly by Princeton Review, and probably because of the fact that we were ranked number 3 best college food in America. And so it might have something to do with the quality of life for students here on campus, but that one I would say might be best reserved for later. And so why we talk about Washington University in St. Louis and the city itself is the connection that they have together in their culture and experience. So we have parks and trails and museums and music and restaurants and food, but every city has that, right? So what makes us special is the way out of its, excuse me, what makes St. Louis special is that it is way out of its league as far as resources for its size, meaning you can enjoy the same benefits without the lines. Wonderful. So now we're going to go ahead and transition into our programs that we offer here at Olin Business School. First, and we will go into a little bit more detail into these after we go through a general overview of the program. We're going to talk about the Master of Accounting program, which is our 3-semester Master of Accounting, our 3-semester Master in Supply Chain Management, our 3-semester Business Analytics program, and the multiple tracks that it offers. And we'll talk about the new tracks that are coming this fall as well. Our Master in Finance, that is also 3 semesters for our Master in Quantitative Finance and 2 semesters for our Masters in Corporate Finance and Investment and Wealth and Asset Management that we'll cover. And also our 4-semester Global Master in Finance. That one is a very unique program that we have here at Olin that has a partnership with multiple different partner institutions that are on the screen on the right. And all of our specialized master's programs have that connection with the Brookings Institute in DC, which, excuse me, here's actually has a deep connection with Washington University in St. Louis and the Olin Business School. All right. So now that we've taken a bit of an overview look on all of the different programs that we offer, we'll go ahead and dive deep into each one of them. So we're going to start with that Master in Accounting. And so, or excuse me, Master of Accounting. So one thing about the Master of Accounting that most students really want to know is that, does it prepare me for that CPA exam? And it does. So it prepares you for your CPA exam and beyond with our master's degree in accounting. And so you can customize your courses while making sure our accounting students have a strong foundation. 16.5 of the required 33 credit hours are electives. And so you can take advantage of that flexibility in your curriculum to meet the CPA exam eligibility requirements for the state or country where you want to work, while also taking some time to explore some other classes that we have offered. And we do have real world learning experiences. And so through our accounting-based practicum courses and projects with the Wells Fargo Advising Center for Finance and Accounting Research, or through volunteer income tax assistant programs, you will round out your academic experience with experiential learning opportunities here at Olin. And you can see on the screen that sample profile of our students, that average profile this last year. And one thing that I do want to make sure that throughout today's presentation I press upon all of our students is that, yes, that information is available and it is important to review, but at the same time, you also want to take into account that all of these are averages. And so to be an average, you have to have numbers above and below. And so you really have to take the time to say, or to see what those are, but to know that we take a holistic approach to each application that is sent in. And so if you maybe don't meet an average GPA, you can see there, but you exceed in a GRE or vice versa, or you're a little bit under averages for entirety of the program, you can still apply for any of the programs that we offer. We're going to take a holistic review application approach. And so we look at every single part of your application. And while yes, your GRE and your GPA or your GMAT scores are important, we do want to take into account all of the other parts of your application. And so don't be dismayed if you see that you're a little bit below some of those averages. Please feel free to reach out and have a conversation with any of the recruiters that you can connect with as well to see that next progression for you. And so you can see those potential career paths with that Master of Accounting. Some of our students have gone on to public accounting, corporate accounting, consulting, and financial services. It's a 33 credit hour program. So in the US, it will meet your 150 credit hour requirement to sit for the CPA exam. And in those courses that you'll take, some of those samples there on the left for you: business analytics using financial statements, accounting policy and research, and fraud prevention. Wonderful. So the next program that we're going to talk about is our Master of Science in Supply Chain Management. And so in just a second, we'll actually talk about our Master of Business Analytics program, which we are launching a new supply chain analytics program or track with. And so that's one way we can have that conversation again, reaching out to a recruiter to talk about what that looks like in differences and what one might be better for you. Kind of going from here, we'll take a general overlook today, but I'd be happy to go a little bit deeper with you and talk about those different experiences that students can have. And so again, a Master of Supply Chain Management, really setting you up to work in those operations spaces. And it is a STEM designated program. And so if anyone is looking, especially our international students, looking for a STEM designated program with potential for an OPT experience afterwards, this program is one that is STEM designated with us. And again, you can see there on the screen of those averages for average GPA, average GMAT, and GRE, and as well as some of those positions that students will go into when they're graduating from their program. So we're going to supply chain management consulting, operations management. You'll take courses that are in operations planning and control, operations and futures, and strategic quality management. So if you're looking to work with a company and really work from the ground up on strategy and being able to work with multiple different people within an organization to combine efficiency throughout an organization in operations and supply chain, this is a fantastic program for students that are wanting to pursue that in the future. Next, we're going to go into our Master of Finance program. So the Master of Finance has multiple tracks in it. And so the first couple that I want to talk with you about is our Master of Science in Finance or Corporate Finance and Investment. And although it's not on the screen here, the Wealth and Asset Management is also on the bottom there, but the averages are generally the same throughout both programs. You can see more on our website for updated information. But there's a few intricacies that are different between the Master of Science in Finance and Master of Science in Corporate Finance and Investment and Wealth and Asset Management. There's a few things that are different. So when you're looking at the curriculum, you'll see a few different courses, again, with the name focusing on a corporate finance and investment over an individual wealth and asset management, and the courses reflect that. There are a few differences that pick up in certain areas depending on what career path you want to take or your future trajectory. And again, be happy to talk about that a little bit more with you or any of the specialized master's program recruiters in our office taking a little bit deeper of a dive into that curriculum with you to really suss out what program might be best for you later on. You can see some sample courses that I mentioned with that curriculum on the screen for Wealth and Asset Management and Corporate Finance and Investment. So a few differences in behavior finance and hedge fund strategies versus money, capital markets, and economic growth, and venture capital and private equity. So a few differences in those sample courses, but you can really see those potential career paths. So capital markets and research, financial analyst, private equity, focusing much more on the out-of-classroom experiences that you can have with our Wells Fargo Advisors Center for Finance and Accounting Research. And so also with this program, you have access to our Center for Experiential Learning opportunities that you can take advantage of to really put that in-classroom knowledge to work outside of the classroom and be prepared for that future career. And so also just in case you did want to know, these two programs are those 2 semesters. So you come for the summer and then fall and spring. And it does prepare you for that CFA Level 1 exam if that's something you're interested in pursuing in the future. All right, and so the other track within Master of Finance that we'll spend a little bit of time on is our Master of Science in Finance, our Quantitative Finance. So again, another STEM designated program that with the potential for OPT once you're finished. The difference with this track versus the other 2 tracks within the Master of Finance is that time commitment. So this one is that 18-month, 3-semester curriculum versus the Master of Finance in Corporate Finance or Wealth and Asset Management, which is a 2-semester curriculum. And so you spend a little bit more time on campus, taking a little bit higher look at all of the data analysis and the more quantitative side of finance. And so you can see that and reflected in some of those sample courses of mathematical finance, quantitative risk management. And so if you have a heavy quantitative background and want to mix that into finance going forward, this might be a wonderful application for those skills for you. A lot of outcomes for students in the past, students will go into asset and risk management. Some will go into capital markets and research, but a lot with that quantitative mathematical background to be able to make those decisions in a financial sector. And again, some of those experiences that you'll have outside of the classroom, one of them that I want to point out is that Quantitative Finance Club. It's a really great experience for students. You actually do a road trip to Chicago and you learn through those student-led competitions. And so again, from that quantitative, heavy mathematical background, if you're looking for a program like that, the Master of Science in Quantitative Finance might be the fit for you. All right. And so the last one of those finance programs that I want to talk a bit about is that Global Master of Finance. If you were able to join me for our Global Master of Finance webinar last week, this might be a refresher course for you. But just to give you a little bit of overview, we have 5 partner programs that we pair with for our Global Master of Finance. Now, each of them has a little bit different of an outcome on degree that you will achieve, but with each program, you will achieve 2 degrees or in some cases a certificate at the same time throughout the program. And so some of them are 3 semesters, some are 4 semesters. It depends varying on each program. And again, I'd be happy to talk a little bit farther about that in the future. You can see those partner programs there on the right, and you'll have different achievements throughout them, such as the Global MBA from Yonsei University to another Master of Finance from a couple other of our partner institutions. But the degree that you will earn here at Olin is that Masters of Finance in Corporate Finance. Some of the potential career paths for students that have gone through this might be in private equity, investment banking, or in commercial banking, taking a much more global look at the way that we work in finance. So you have access to domestic and international professional networks. So you're going to build that network not just here in the US during your time at Olin, but also in that partner program in a country probably other than your own. And one unique aspect of this program that a lot of students really love to talk about is the immersion experience that you have to New York City and Washington, D.C. So just about over 2 weeks, our students in the Global Master of Finance take an in-depth immersion experience into those 2 cities, meeting with business leaders, Brookings Institute leaders, and other alumni to create those networks and to see those experiences come to fold of their future outcomes and what they want to do. And so it's a really fantastic program for someone who's looking for more of a global sense on finance and maybe wants that experience in a different country or a different location than where they're currently at. All right, and so as we spoke about earlier, our new tracks within our Master of Science in Business Analytics. And so we do have 3 new tracks coming in this fall. And so we previously had Customer Analytics as the program, and we're adding FinTech, Healthcare, and Supply Chain Analytics to the portfolio this fall. And now we don't yet have the curriculum for those 3 new tracks, but we are working on that process currently. One thing that I often talk with students about when they ask about curriculum and how the program is going to be structured, I reassure you that we're not just going through this in a manner of what we think might be best for students, but we're working with national and world business partners to make sure that the courses that you're taking as a part of those 3 new programs are setting you up for success for your future career. What you're learning in the classroom, we want to make viable for your future job. And so that is why we're taking a little bit longer to go through that curriculum process, is to make sure that that experience is impactful for you and you're getting everything out of the program that you want. So some sample courses from the previous Customer Analytics, you can see there, decision making, data mining, pricing strategy, marketing research. And so what we're setting you up for with our Master of Science in Business Analytics is to be that person that can take a mountain full of data and condense it into a digestible statement to your bosses and your leaders. Being able to take this information that might not make sense to some and make it make sense to many. That is what we're setting you up for as a in our Master of Science in Business Analytics program. Some of the experiences that you'll have, we've talked about Center for Experiential Learning, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But we do have the Center for Customer Analytics and Big Data. And so that's a hub for research, innovation, and applied knowledge in the field of big data. Again, just like past programs, you're taking the in-classroom knowledge and applying it to real-world scenarios to gain that experience of what it's actually going to be like when you're in a real-world setting. And so you get to take those wonderful courses and apply them in a real-world context in a STEM-designated program. And so that's another one, if anyone is looking for a STEM-designated program and potential for OPT for any of our international students, this would be another one of those programs. Wonderful. And so those kind of are the overview for all of the programs that we offer here at Olin. Now, like I said earlier, I'd be happy to, once we're finished with today's webinar, answer some more broad questions about each of those, but then I'll also talk about some next steps for those that want to have a conversation and really talk about a little bit more in-depth, maybe curriculum or what program might be an exact fit for their future career goals. So we're going to kind of transition into our student experience here at Olin. You're going to be here maybe for 2 semesters or 3 semesters, so you really want to know what it's going to be like for you as a student. Well, I can tell you that you will not go without being connected to your other students. We have a plethora of student clubs and organizations that are all viewable on the website for our students. And it is really important, I think, to note that it's not just for MBA students or other master's students in Olin Business School or PhD students. All of our organizations are designed for all of our students in our graduate programs. And so get involved, get out there and really make that experience your own with some of our sample clubs. You can see there our Chinese New Year celebration that we had a few years ago with our Chinese Student Association, all the way to some of our interest groups and clubs. We have a wine club, which does a few wonderful events throughout the year. So it really shows you that there's a lot of differentiation in the different experiences that you can have here at your time at Olin. Next, we'll talk about our faculty engagement. I think one thing that I talk with students the most about is how active and engaged are your faculty. And I always answer with a story of the time that I was outside of a classroom and I was doing a little bit of work and a student came out and the professor was talking about the rest of their day. They were a little busy. And it was a master's student who just had a question about their experience in the class and some of the things that they were working on and how it related to their future career goals and wanted to get the advice of that faculty member. And without hesitation, that faculty member said, absolutely, let's go grab a cup of coffee, and spent 5 minutes talking with the student about their future experiences, even though that professor had a very full schedule that day. And so that's just a simple example of the relationship building that happens in our programs, either in those 1-year programs in Master of Finance or in that Global Master of Finance, all the way to those 18-month programs and 3 semesters. You build those relationships and get to engage with faculty who are doing cutting-edge research. So you're getting that in your classroom and being able to go out in the world with that knowledge. Social events. So one thing that I will say that here at Olin we are pretty good at doing is throwing a party. And so you can see there on the screen, that's actually our Dean, Dean Taylor there. I will say, since Dean Taylor has arrived on campus, we've had quite a few more photo booths than we've had in the past. So I think he is a bit of a fan of a photo booth, so you can constantly see them in our different activities that we'll have around campus. And again, that comes in all types of different celebrations, as well as some really great opportunities for students to engage with staff and faculty on campus. Networking, and very important for all of our students, and looking at those not just future career goals, but connections that you'll make with alumni and future business leaders. So multiple opportunities throughout the year and speaker series, as well as off-campus networking opportunities and roadshows and relationship building with the Weston Career Center to really build and hone that network. Working on building that foundation for yourself and how to propose a worth statement, how to talk about your personal statement, and how to build those healthy relationships to make sure that network is strong for you going after your master's program. It's going to be something, those skills you'll learn throughout your time here at Olin. And then finally, community impact. one thing that is very important to us here at Olin is how can we impact a community, not just here in St. Louis, but around the world. You can see one right there in our community impact picture. That is the director for the Center for Experiential Learning with a couple of students and a project that they took on in Uganda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So communities that are thousands of miles away from that here in St. Louis, and they're creating impact and positive experiences in those communities to better the people in those communities that they've never met, that they want to have that impact around the world. So if you're looking for a program that really encompasses great experience, but also how can you impact the world around you, that would be a fantastic place to start with any of our programs here at Olin. Wonderful. And so I've talked at you for just about 25 minutes or so. So what are you going to do now? Are you ready to apply? There's only a couple things that we'll need with the application. We will need the online application completed in full, and that would require a resume and a couple essays, and then our GMAT or GRE score. So I get asked all the time if we prefer one score or another, or if one might be more beneficial for students over another, and the answer is really no. We don't prefer one or another, and one doesn't give you a leg up over another. We realize that each student tests differently, and they do better at one test over another, statistically proven. And so we want to make sure that you get the best experience possible and take the test that best suits you. I highly encourage and recommend each student to take a practice test if you haven't yet, to take that GMAT or GRE. They're available online for free, and find what test fits you best, because it doesn't matter to us if we just require one test score to be on file for your application. Next is transcripts. So that is one from each institution that you've attended. And so any study abroad experiences or transfer credits from other places, we would need transcripts from those. But as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, for GMAT or GRE and transcripts, all documents can be unofficial. And so if you have unofficial copies of all of your documentation, all you need to do is upload them to that application at the time that you work on that application. We do not require letters of recommendation, and so that's a question I often get. We do not require those, and so there's no space to upload them. It's one that we would not require as a part of your application. And then lastly is that application fee. And so if you complete all parts of the application, that'll be that final piece as just to complete that application fee so that your application can be reviewed by the committee. All right, and so kind of go through a couple of things that we've talked about here today as we're getting towards the end of our time together. If you want to know more about some stuff here at Olin, if you're ready to apply and you want to know a little bit more about finances and how can you finance that degree, well, you're in luck. We actually have a webinar this Friday with our financial services office. And you can register for that the same way that you registered for this webinar. It's just online. And so if you're wanting to know a little bit more about financing that degree, it's a fantastic place to start. And then, kind of what do you want to do now? You can attend a webinar, you can attend an on-campus event if you're available. We have some campus visit days as well as preview days coming still in the spring for any of our domestic students or international students that want to fly in for those events. I highly encourage you to speak with a recruiter. I'm one of them, and I often tell students I get paid to talk to people, and I love it. I love to talk with students about their future career goals and how Olin can best help them in their pathway. And so please feel free to reach out. You can see the information on the bottom of the screen there at olingradadmissions@worcester.edu. That will then be sent to one of our recruiters and to be able to connect with you to either schedule a meeting or answer your questions via email. And then you can always start your application. If you're still considering a program for this fall, we do have round 4. So our last round of applications has a deadline of April 10th. So that will come before you know it. So start thinking about that application and the materials now if you're still thinking about a program for this fall, because they will be due on April 10th. And for any of our international students who are listening, I highly recommend that you get together all of your application materials before you apply to make sure that your application is complete at the time of application. Because if you were granted admission then it is a very quick turnaround time for visa processes and other documentation. And if your application is not complete, that can slow down the process. And so that's just one we want to avoid. And so making sure you have everything together at the time of your application. Well, wonderful. Well, I will now open up our time for question and answers. So we have just a few minutes that I'd be happy to answer some questions if you have them. And so please feel free again to use that question and answer box, and we'll go through them one by one. I do see a question that we have here from Ted. And Ted, let me see here really quick. And so Ted, kind of to take your question a little bit more general, I will follow up more specifically with you a little bit later. But again, as we talked about with how the importance of a GPA. And so as we talked about a little bit before when talking about programs, we're looking at averages. And so you have to remember, again, we have averages. There are some below and some above. And so if you see that that GPA that you have might be one that's a little bit lower than the others, excuse me, that you've seen throughout the application process, that'd be a great time to have a conversation with a recruiter. But again, I just want to remind everyone that they are averages. So I would feel free to still apply and just to have that conversation. But thank you for your question. All right, and so next we have a question about application fee waivers. And so very rarely will we waive an application fee. There is a process that we can go through. And so again, I would really encourage anyone who's thinking about getting an app or wanting an application fee waiver to reach out and have a conversation with our office and your recruiter in our office. That's a conversation that we'll have about reasoning behind an application fee waiver, why you might want to request it, the process, all of those different things that we'll need to gain a little bit more information. And so that's one that I highly encourage you to reach out to a recruiter or our office if that's something that you think you would like to talk about. But thank you for that question. All right. And so thank you for the question, the next person. So they're talking about the Global Masters of Science, or excuse me, Global Masters of Finance program. And so it is not too late to apply to those programs. We still, as I talked about, and you can see on the screen, our application deadline for round 4, so that is the last application deadline, is April 10th. And so you can go through that whole process still if you're thinking about the Global Masters of Finance program. And then for the curriculums for those programs, on the website, we list all those partner programs, and you can find the curriculum for each semester here at Olin, and then on their websites, you'll need to discover that program curriculum for them. So it does have links to the curriculum and some sample courses that they offer in each different part. And if you want to reach out to our office at that Olin grad admissions at worcester.edu, I'd be happy to connect you if you're still unable to find those on the website. Oh, and Kian, I appreciate that. I will make sure to follow up a little bit later just to make sure that we get that answered for you. I do apologize that you hadn't received that answer yet, but I will make sure that we get to you. If you want to email that Olin grad admissions and just with your name again and with your question and just mention that you were in the webinar today, I'd be happy to make sure that that gets answered for you as quickly as possible. Thank you again for your patience. And okay, so talking about working experience and kind of your past history, again, we talked about the couple of things that are required for the application, and a resume is one of them. So we do look at your past experiences, and work experience might not be something that you have a lot of, but you might have differentiating experiences in internships or in volunteer experiences. And so that's why we give you the space in your essays to talk a little bit more about those experiences. And so I wouldn't say that work experience is preferred over others. It really is, what is the whole picture that your application is painting? And so when you're looking at it in total, looking at each separate part. And so how are you going to talk about your different experiences if you don't have work experience in others that you do have? And so just thinking about it as that angle rather than, oh my gosh, I don't have any work experience, they're not going to want me in this program. We really do look holistically at every part of the application, and it really is about how you approach each part. And again, I know I keep coming back to it, and I apologize that I sound like a broken record, but reaching out to our office and speaking with a recruiter is the best place for that, to talk about how you can approach those on your applications. Thank you so much for your question. All right, and so next question, that's a great one. From Abhishek. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. And so talking about a master's degree versus MBA, I'm guessing, especially middle-level career and higher than the average demographic. So I think, again, it's another question to have with a recruiter and talk about your individual outcomes and what you're hoping to achieve from the program. It's one if you're wanting to stay in your current business or current industry and accelerate in there, or maybe move up, or if you're wanting to pivot into a new industry, talking about what that looks like and how each program can benefit you. I'd be happy to have that conversation a little bit later if you wanted to reach out, and kind of talking in general about the analytics program you mentioned, but also any of the programs and what they're designed for and outcomes. So it's more of it's not more of do I fit the profile versus what are the outcomes that you're hoping to have. I've had conversations with individuals who were above our age demographic and far above our age demographic, looking to go back and maybe accelerate in their career or pick up a new degree for a different career that they're choosing. So again, a fantastic question, and be happy to follow up a little bit later with you if you want to reach out to that Olin grad admissions email. Thank you, Abhishek, for your question. All right, and so I don't see any other questions in our Q&A box, so I'll give just another minute if anybody still here has any questions. I'm going to wrap up as we go. I just want to say thank you again for all of the time that you've spent with me. I know for some of you and a lot of our international students, it's quite late where you are, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today and to learn a little bit more about the programs that we offer here at Olin. Again, I know I've said it a lot today, but I really highly encourage you, if you have any questions, to reach out. We're happy to speak with any of our students about any questions that they have about programs. It is, I will say, a quite busy time in our office right now. So if you don't hear back immediately from us, just give it a little bit of time and you will get in contact with someone from our office to answer your questions. All right, and so I don't see any other questions here. And so I will go ahead and assume that I've just done a wonderful job and answered all of your questions today. But again, just leave you with the idea that if you do have them, please feel free to email us at olingradadmissions@worcester.edu. Thank you again so much for taking some time today, and I will talk to you again later.